Once we're able to get our construction plans, we'll be able to go out for bid. We'll be able to establish our final budget, and then we can go out for financing. And the financing is going to be rather substantial. I've never done a financing in the millions of dollars like this one. So it's going to be a learning experience. And that's the part that I'm kind of bracing myself for, because it's a little scary, to be honest. It's scary. And I ask myself a lot of questions like, what if I don't get the financing? I don't have millions of dollars to build this. I've put a fair amount of time, money, and work into this project, and I need to make it happen. Hello, and welcome back to the Very Real Estate Effect podcast, a show dedicated to real estate investing right here in Quebec. And today you have the luck, the chance to have a solo episode. I'm going to be sharing some of the updates on the projects that we're working on, because there's a lot that's happened. It's been a little while, and I really wanted to bring you up to speed on what's going on. So before we get into it, just as a reminder, I deeply appreciate your support. Thank you for sharing this episode with someone you feel could benefit from this conversation and this experience sharing. And leave us a review, leave us a rating on Spotify, Apple iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. It really helps in reaching out more people just like you. So there you go. Also, in terms of housekeeping, we're organizing some events with the Real Estate Effect. Stay tuned on the website and on the Instagram, where we always announce the events. And I look forward to seeing you there. Now, what's been happening? So we have two projects on the go right now. Well, we have more than that, but today we're going to be talking about two of them. One of them, before I go into details, I'll give a brief recap in case it's your first time you listen to the podcast and you have a rough idea of what is it that we're talking about. So the first project is a 4-unit multifamily that we bought about a year ago, last fall, 2021, in Laval near Cartier Metro. And it's fully vacant, 4-unit. We actually bought it from Revenue Quebec. It was a succession. It's been quite the adventure. I've already discussed like the closing and everything that happened. But literally, like, we closed in end of November of 2021. In mid-January, we applied for our building permit to be able to fully strip and kind of change a little bit of the layout, because there was 3 residential units and a commercial in the front on the ground floor that we wanted to get rid of and do a 4th residential unit instead. We need to rework the facade because it was just all glass, and from an energy point of view and from an aesthetics, it was ugly and bad. Anyway, so we applied for a building permit, and we were told it would take about 2 to 3 months. Well, hold on to this. We actually got the permit about 2 weeks ago. So it took a whole 9 months. And we were hoping to start the renovation in about April, May, and be completed for July 2022. We're now November 2022, and we're barely starting on the renovation project. So you don't always control everything, and there's a number of things that have happened that made it take that long. And I'm going to go into it and kind of summarize what I would do differently so you can learn from my experience and not make the same mistakes. So first of all, I went for a dessinateur and not an architect, because a dessinateur could do up to a 4-unit. And it was literally like on one floor, we're stripping and changing the layout a little bit. On the second, that's on the ground floor. On the first floor, we're just refreshing the units. We're not changing anything to the layout. We're just kind of redoing the bathrooms and the kitchen, redoing a bit of paint, the electrical fixtures and stuff like that. So there isn't really anything major. And the dessinateur could do it. We applied to the city, and what happened is that about a month and a half after that, we got a rejection on our file saying that because that, yes, a technologue dessinateur could do the project, but because it was adjacent to another building, it also took the area of the other building. Therefore, it was over 300 square meters. Therefore, the dessinateur couldn't do it. So I was really pissed because it's just a pure technicality. So it took me about a month to go back to him, and then we worked with an architect and got it all planned out and redone. And then we filed back in about May. And then we just kept following up with the city and following up with the city. And in our case, we also had to ask for a parking exemption because it's supposed to be one parking spot for one unit. We only had 3 parking spots, so we had to have an extension for one. Anyways, that took a bit of time, and obviously there's a fee. And by the time it reaches l'urbanisme at the city hall, it's a different department, and they ask for different questions. And anyways, so it took a long time. And in some cases, it could have put really the project in jeopardy. Now we were able to withstand because we've literally just been paying for the property and nothing's moved forward, and now it will. So I'm happy to have my building permit. I'm going to print it and slap it on the window where everyone can see it, including the inspectors from the city. And we have the contractor that's supposed to be coming very shortly to start the work. We need to strip and demolish, and then on the ground floor at least. And then we need to fully rebuild electricity, plumbing, you name it. So a few things that I would do differently is that I will never work with a technologue again. I will always just go for an architect because they can do more, they know a little bit better, and yes, it's a little bit more expensive, but don't be cheap with your professionals. That's something that I did, and I kind of deeply regret because I feel like it cost me a few months. Oh yeah, also I forget, there was an issue with the interpretation of one of the building codes where the architect said, no, the unit that I designed is legal. And the city was saying, no, it's not legal. So it took about 2 months of back and forth to the point where I would have liked to have a meeting with the architect and the city, but having a meeting with the city is near impossible. So we had to go back, change the plans to their interpretation, and then refile. And then from there, it only took 2 months. Only. One of my takeaways from this is, sadly, the lowest common denominator is the one issuing the permit. In this case, it's the city. And I've realized that at least in this case, there is almost no point to butt heads and try to push them and convince them because they're doing their best. They seem to be overworked. They have an idea and their interpretation, and they're just going to stick to it. So you can't really change their mind. Another thing I would do differently is that I would, well, and we kind of did it. Like, I would sensitize the city that everyone is complaining that there's a shortage of dwelling. There's not enough rental units. There's a housing crisis. This building has been vacant for 3 years. We bought it a year ago, and we were hoping to do the project within 6 months. Now it's been a year, and we're barely starting now. And so I wish I could make them understand at the city and all of the stakeholders who actually have a decision to make that sometimes the biggest impediment to new dwellings coming on the market is actually working with the city. And it's difficult. It's difficult to tell them that because they don't want to take responsibility, and because the individual that you speak to, it's never their fault. And I'm not blaming anyone over there, not directly. There's nothing of that. And I understand their position. It's just that it's crazy that it took us 9 months to get a building permit that should have taken 3 months for just a simple renovation. We're not changing anything to the footprint of the building. Anyways, so the contractor is lined up, but because we lost so much time, the contractor had to take other jobs. Can't blame him. And now he's got to fit us back in, and it's about like 2.5 to 3 months of work. So we got to get it done as much as possible before winter, because winter is going to hit, and the cold and the snow and the water and humidity, and we have some brickwork to do. We have windows to change, and all this needs to be taken care of. So ASAP, chop chop, we're going to try to get this done as soon as possible. So the objective now for this one is to be finished by April, to be able to rent out. And then we're toying with the idea of keeping the property, refinancing it, or selling it. Or we'll make that decision a little bit later on. We do have an obligation towards a partner on this one. We have a note to pay back, so we will have to do that, principal and interest. So we'll need to figure it out, because by the time we finish the project, we need to write a check. So we'll see how we organize that. In a way, I'd love to keep the property. It's really well located. It'll be fully renovated. It'll be easy to operate. It's just that I need to be able to refinance it to pay back. So we'll look at the different options. And that's one thing that I'm actually happy about. Yes, there is one, is that we've started very early on to be able to assess what is going to be our most likely exit strategy, whether to, as I said, sell or refinance. And if we were to sell, what could we hope for it? If we want to refinance, kind of what's the max loan to value we could hope for? What are some of the things we could do to really try to maximize the opportunity to refinance? And we've worked on it already. Now we just need to actually do the project. So this is where at on this one, and I'll be more than happy to give you some updates later on in the future as the work progresses. And I know I'll also go on site and do a bit of share on social media where we're at. So that's for the first project in Laval. The second one in Saint-Jérome, that's the big development project. This is 2 pieces of land that we acquired back in May, end of April, beginning of May. In the city of Saint-Jérome, not too far from the train station, where we are building a 16 residential unit building on 4 floors with 5,000 square feet of commercial space and an underground parking for 16 spots. So this is a project that was already approved by the city by the time we acquired it. It's just that the previous owner did not build, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to build it. So we've been working on it since March, actually. And we've so funny story, and I've shared this before. The building actually 3 weeks before closing, the building burnt. It was squatted. The city of Saint-Jérome already wanted it demolished because it'd been vacant for a few years. It was a commercial duplex. It'd been squatted. There was already a fire that had started. There's been numerous complaints in the neighborhood about the people going over there and the danger that it was, and so on and so forth. It's between the road and the river. So it's a bit of a tricky spot, and I'll get back to why. So finally, as I said, it burnt before closing. We had said with the seller that we would start to take responsibility before we closed, because he was really tired of it, and that allowed us to get some very favorable terms. So the issue with the burn is that we needed to clean up. And right after it burned, the city sent us some letters saying that we had 6 months to clean up. And because there was asbestos, it needed to be decontaminated. So this is what I'm going to spend a little bit of time on today. So this was actually a fairly lengthy process. Now, the term decontamination sounds really fancy in a way. And when I close my eyes, I think of like a team in white suits, like dressed up like cosmonauts and with big gloves, and to go remove everything. Well, it's not exactly that. They do wear white suits. There's different degrees of contamination and of severity of how it needs to be treated. Originally, we were on a high level. We were able to negotiate down to a medium, which actually makes a big difference on the procedure and on the cost. Yet we needed to treat the entire leftover of the fire as contaminated debris. Now, before the building burned, there was a report done, and the asbestos and the contamination, the materials that contain asbestos, was identified in very specific locations, in 2 walls in the basement, in some flooring in the basement, and then in 1 wall on the ground floor. So again, it's very localized. But because it burnt, la CNSST, which is the health worker organization in Quebec, is established that because it had been burnt, they consider that everything has been mixed. Therefore, the entire remains needs to be treated as contaminated. Now, what that means is that everything from the land needs to be removed with a level 2 contamination procedure, which means that everything needs to be put in huge bins. Imagine the big dump truck, except in the big dump truck, you need to put a liner. You need to put like a gigantic bag essentially, and then they need to fill the bag, close the bag, and then when the truck goes to the dump yard, it's supposed to go in a different hole in the ground. Because let's be honest, when we say decontamination, is that we take contaminated soil, content, material, whatever it is, you put in a bag and then you bury the bag, which I find is absolutely ludicrous, because for soil, there's actually ways to decontaminate it, and that's through being burnt. It burns all the chemicals that are in it, and some of the organic matter. Anyways, the impact that it had on us is that it's a lot more costly. I was going to say contaminated load is about $3,000, whereas a regular load is about $1,700. So when you have to do 40 of them, I'll let you do the math. All of a sudden you go from about 60K to 120. So, and then obviously there's all the cost of the mobilization. You need to have 2 excavators. You need to have the man hours. You need to have a project supervisor. You need to rent some bathrooms. You need to, anyways, there's a lot of things that need to be done in order to get that procedure going. So what I did is that I didn't really know much about how to treat contamination. So where do we start when it's like that? We start with educating ourselves. And that's one thing I highly recommend everyone to do. We don't know how to do everything. That's okay. Just educate yourself, learn, talk to people who've done it. And I actually find a gentleman in a decontamination company, and I'm going to do a shout out to him. His name is Jean-Michel, and he's at Platinum Demolition. The guy was absolutely great. He's a Frenchie as well, and we spent quite a bit of time on the phone, and he kind of walked me through how does it work, what needs to be done, and so on and so forth. So basically, I got him to quote plus 5 other companies. I got 6 quotes for this, okay? And the quotes, I always gave the same scope. Obviously, I would share the same set of documents. So the plans, the contamination report, there's like 4 or 5 documents that I just always sent. I had prepared a template, and then boom, 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 I just sent it out to the companies. And the prices ranged from about 150,000 to 300,000 for the same job, simple to double. So to me, it really shows the importance of getting a lot of quotes, because I didn't really know what this was supposed to count. But when I see that the ratio is from 1 to 2, you start to wonder. So what I did is that I took the 3 best quotes, and then I went back to them and said, look, you're in the top 3. Can you sharpen your pencil? i.e., can you give me a better offer? Can you lower it a little bit? Can you boom, boom, boom? And so obviously what I did before that is I thoroughly read all of the quotes, and then I questioned them about it. Hey, you included this. You didn't. What about this? What about this? Are you providing the generator? What about the water access? What about the pump? What about this and this and that? Because one thing that we needed to do, because it was contamination and asbestos is considered volatile, is that to prevent the dust from flying away, we needed to be wetting, to be pouring water, basically arroser, spraying the debris. Now you think like, oh, well, it makes sense. Yeah, but don't forget that I pay by weight. So I'm wetting something that I'm gonna have to pay for by weight afterwards. So now, luckily, we did it at a time of the year. We did it in October, mid-October, where it rained quite a bit. It was fairly damp, so we needed to wet, but not as much as we originally anticipated, or if we would have done it in July and August when it was really hot and there was a lot of dust. So in order to be able to start, first I had to select the company. I got 6 quotes. I narrowed it down to 3, then to 2, and then I selected 1. And the thing is that I really selected as I wanted my overall cost to be as low as possible. And so, some companies were saying like, well, given the amount, it'll take like 40 bins, it'll take 35 bins, it'll take 45 bins, and so on and so forth. So anyways, I selected 1. I'm actually happy with the choice. It actually went pretty smoothly and well. So once the company was selected, we needed to have the authorization from la CNSST and from the city. Now, the city says if la CNSST is okay with it, we're okay with it. We just want to know what the schedule is and when the work is actually going to take place. So the company had to write a full procedure about how they're going to proceed. So it was required for their excavator operator to have breathing apparatus. They needed to be in full suits. There needs to be fencing higher than what it was. There needs to be it needs to be sprayed with water to minimize the dust flying away and limiting the possible contamination for the surroundings and so on and so forth. So on the first one, the procedure was rejected because of, I was going to say, rather small technicalities. They submitted a second one. Everyone agreed. So then we were able to start. So we started. It took about 2 weeks. It was a fairly lengthy process, and we got it done. So I'm quite relieved by that. We were also able to separate some of the metal, and the metal gets sent to en valorisation because the metal is actually valuable. So that was another good point. Now, as I share the story, it might almost sound like easy and short and stuff like that, but in order to do this, I had to get the demolition permit and I had to get a certificate from the Ministry of Environment. I think I've talked about that a little bit in the past. I tried to do it on my own. I ended up getting a wonderful biologist from the city of Saint-Jérome, who actually lives 5 minutes away from the site. So she knew the site quite well. And she was very, very helpful in us getting that authorization. Then you have to get the demolition permit with the city, which essentially means you need to explain what you're going to do, and then you need to go pay because that's really what it's about. And then they issue the permit. Once you have the permit, you can do the work. So this is where we ended up at. Now, over the summer, in beginning of July, we actually applied for the building permit. That means that we were able to finalize the plans for permits and get all the plans from the engineers. So the civil engineer, mechanical engineer, structural engineer, and fire prevention engineer. So the package to submit the permit was actually very lengthy. It was a USB key. And we waited for the city for a fair amount of time. They finally got back to us. We had a meeting with them to go with the architect to go over several little things they want to change, or the plans to specify certain things and this and that, which we did. And now we're about to resubmit everything. And then they said, if it all meets the criteria, after that, it'll be rather quick, which is, well, quick. It's all relative, right? It could just be a couple of days, couple of weeks. So where this gets good is that once the project is fully approved for construction, then we can go back to the architect and to the engineers to finalize the plans for construction, because we know that that's what's going to happen. So then they can go into more details, so that once we have the construction plans, we can go and get bids for the actual construction work. Because right now we have a preliminary budget on what it's going to cost, but we need to get quotes, and the prices change a lot right now. And I'll make a little parenthesis. There's been a lot of increase in the price of materials, the price of labor. We all know how since 2 years, construction costs has skyrocketed. And with the current increase in interest rates, a lot of projects have actually been put on hold, and we're starting to see the effect of the slowdown in construction. So now the interesting thing is that now I have contractors calling me to say, hey, you said you were going to have a project. When can we bid? When can we bid? And I have some subcontractors that are, roofing, plumbing, electricity, and stuff like that are now also, voicing their desire for more work. So it's a good turnaround from what the market was like 6 months or a year ago, where it was very difficult to get a general contractor to even look at your project because they just had so much work. So once we're able to get our construction plans, we'll be able to go out for bid. We'll be able to establish our final budget, and then we can go out for financing. And the financing is going to be rather substantial. I've never done a financing in the millions of dollars like this one. So it's going to be a learning experience. And that's the part that I'm kind of bracing myself for, because it's a little scary, to be honest. It's scary. And I ask myself a lot of questions, like, what if I don't get the financing? I don't have millions of dollars to build this. I've put a fair amount of time, money, and work into this project, and I need to make it happen. I need to make it happen. So it's actually stressing me out a little bit, but I try to stay strong, and I'll figure out a way. Where there's a will, there's a way. I will figure it out. I will find a solution. So, because I don't have the choice, I need to make it work. So I've had several conversations with mortgage brokers who've told me, like, look, it's a good project. It's just right now it doesn't really work. Maybe you wait a year to 18 months. And that's really my last resort. I don't want to wait 18 months. I can't from a financial point of view. Even if that means that the project might be less profitable for me, I'll take a haircut, pay cut, whatever, but I need to make it work. And the thing is that at the macro level, this project is a learning experience. As I've always shared with you, my big why and my big goal is to find eventually a much bigger piece of land and go build several hundred units, so we can offer good housing for families and for immigrants to come in and build memories and build a life, in this wonderful country that is Canada, because I'm an immigrant and I want to help others. So that's where we're at with this project. If you have any ideas on capital financing and so on, please reach out. I'm always interested in thinking out of the box and hearing from you, from your feedback. So on this project, that's kind of where we're at. Stay tuned for more in the other episodes, and I look forward to coming and telling you that we got the building permit from the city, and that now we're getting quotes and we're going out for bid. And I will also share a little bit more maybe about the team that I've built around me, because real estate is a team sport, and I have several people that are helping me with it, and I might bring on maybe one of them, maybe with Marco at some point. Love to have him on. Anyways, stay tuned. Thank you for listening to this. I'm always happy to share it, and especially as this is a solo episode, I really want your feedback. Let me know. Do you like this type of format? Do you want to hear more about these projects? Do you have questions? I'm also planning to do an episode just to answer questions. So send me some questions so I can answer them. On this wonderful note, keep making offers. Research your market. Right now, a lot of people are scared, but as Warren Buffett said, be greedy when others are fearful, and fearful when others are greedy. Right now we can see like price decreases on a lot of listings, and the pool of buyers has shrunk dramatically. It's a lot less competitive, and every real estate agent I've been speaking to tells me like, oh, now there's like one or two offers. It always closes below asking. So it's a time of opportunity for you and I. And it's a time of opportunity for people who take action, who are trained, and who are thorough. So I hope that's you. And if you're looking to start, now might be a good time. As we all say, and Robert Kiyosaki's the first one to say it. Like, it's going to be hard. It might be hard for the next little while, but fortunes will be built. Will you be a part of it? That's the question. I'm definitely trying to. So on this note, have a wonderful day and stay tuned. Thank you, and I'll talk to you next week.